Hello, my name is Charlotte Hesacker, and I am a counseling intern here at Clackamas Community College. As we're getting closer and closer to the end of winter term, I wanted to reach out and offer some psychologically and scientifically backed methods to help you prepare for and take tests effectively. So thank you for tuning in, and let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about is state-dependent learning, or state-dependent memory, which is this really cool phenomenon in which the retrieval of a memory is most effective when the individual is in the same state of consciousness that they were in when the memory was formed. Essentially, you want to replicate as many things from when you were studying as you can when you're taking the test. You want to recreate the same biological and psychological cues that were occurring when you studied. If you kind of use this idea to create a learning ritual, you can maximize your learning state and then reproduce that maximized learning state when you're in the test-taking setting. And that's going to help you engage with your memories and recall what was covered. So there's a couple of different ways to do this. The first one is chewing gum or having a flavor of breath mints that you find really pleasant and chewing that gum both when you're studying and when you're taking the test. Research has shown this actually has some pretty positive effects on cognitive performance, including enhanced alertness, sustained attention, and increased executive functioning. Similarly, having a smellable object, such as a piece of felt that you've cut into whatever shape makes you happy and added a few drops of essential oil to, and then smelling it when you study and when you're taking the test, helps create the same state that you were in for both settings. So you can even use this and have multiple scents for different tests. Like if you have a piece of cloth that smells like oranges, and that's what you smell when you're studying for math, and one that smells like peppermint when you're studying for social sciences, and a lavender one for chemistry. Our brains are so incredibly tuned into our senses of smell that just by smelling those smells, your brain will remember, oh, it's orange. I smell orange when I'm thinking about math. Oh, it's peppermint. I smell peppermint when I'm thinking about social sciences. And it'll make it easier to access the things you've learned. Also, wearing comfortable layered clothes is really helpful because then you can kind of adjust your temperature. Then you're not going to be too hot or too cold when studying and when taking a test. I also add comfortable in there because personally, I just think it's easier to learn when you're not worried about, feeling uncomfortable in what you're wearing. So wear that hoodie, wear your favorite pair of jeans, wear something that's going to make you comfortable and that you can kind of adjust to the temperature in the room. You can also exercise 10 to 15 minutes before you study and before the test. This can be as simple as doing a few jumping jacks, stretching, jogging in place, or doing a quick lap around the block or the classroom at a walk. This gets the blood and oxygen flowing to your brain, and higher levels of oxygen enable better thinking in your brain. So get your heart rate up a little bit and get ready to think. Also, having a water bottle with you for both studying and for taking the test is just another tactile way to remind yourself that you're in this learning mode. It's the same water bottle that you have when you study as when you're taking the test. Furthermore, our brains use a lot of water, especially when they're thinking hard, such as they are during a test, so it's really important to remain hydrated. Finally, you can listen to the same kinds of music when you study as you do when you're taking the test. Now, you're going to have to check in with your professor and make sure that headphones are allowed during the test because some professors might not want students to be plugged in while they're taking a test. But this is absolutely another cue that can help remind your brain, oh, we always listen to AC/DC when we're studying math. I'm listening to AC/DC. It's time to pull out those math memories. Also, you don't want to underestimate a good night's sleep. Research has shown multiple times that we remember more, think clearer, when our brains are well rested. Our brains need sleep to repair and recharge after every day, and they also use this time to process our short-term memories and learnings and convert them into long-term memories that actually can be accessed later and can be helpful on the test and in future classes. If you're having trouble getting to sleep the night before a test because of nerves, totally normal. And there's a couple of things you can do. You can practice a sleep meditation. They're pretty easy to find on YouTube or on apps like Calm, Headspace, or Insight Timer. You can engage in a grounding exercise, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Or you can just listen to some soothing music. Just anything to kind of help take your mind off the anxiety and keep you in that position where you are resting, eyes shut, ready for sleep. I strongly encourage you to resist the temptation to scroll through your phone at a time like this, because while yes, scrolling through your phone can be distracting and can relieve that anxiety, the light from your screen is going to keep your brain active much later into the night than resting in the dark will. So I very strongly encourage you to find other ways to address your anxiety than by scrolling through your phone the night before a test. Research has also shown that studying for small chunks of time over a longer period is actually more effective than studying once for a really long stretch of time. So, for example, it's week 9 right now, and finals are in 2 weeks. So if you take 10 minutes each day between now and your finals to study a subject, research has actually shown that will allow your brain to retain more of the information, and you'll have a better outcome on the test in all likelihood than you would if you spent 2 hours the night before or the morning of your exam cramming. So stretching out the amount of time you're studying over a longer period of time is actually a better way of processing your information. And it's going to feel a little bit less anxiety inducing because you've got more time. It's not, oh, the exam is in 3 hours, or oh, the exam is at 8 tomorrow morning. You're giving yourself more space to process information. Now, when you're studying, and when you're learning in general, there are usually 3 categories of information. There's the information you know, the information you kind of know, and the information that you know you don't know. Now, while it's tempting to spend a lot of your studying time focusing on what you don't know, it's actually more effective to start off by reviewing what you do know briefly, and then spending the majority of your time converting the information you kind of know into information you definitely know, and then wrapping up by spending a little bit of time on the things you know you don't know. This enables you to maximize the amount of information that you're confident you possess. Obviously, if you can make time to study all of those things in depth and you can convert all of the things you don't know into things you do know, that is fantastic. But if you are pressed for time, try to focus on converting the things you think you know into things you know you know. Finally, one last note about cramming. Research has shown that cramming, or stressfully studying the night before an exam, is not beneficial. Your brain retains less information when it's stressed and rushed, especially if it's trying to retain this information while also being sleep deprived. So go ahead and take your time to study over a long term for short periods, and again, remember to get that good night's sleep the night before. Now, once you start a test, you can do a memory dump. This is particularly helpful on tests that include repetitive or specific information, like a math test or a history exam. And a memory dump is exactly what it sounds like. The test starts and you just take a couple of minutes to write down all the information you can remember that you think is going to be relevant to this test, that you're concerned you might forget. So this is really helpful with like formulas or equations, dates that are hard to keep straight, lists of names or events, acronyms, or anything else that you're kind of worried you might forget about. So you just remind yourself right before you go in, sit down, test starts, write it all down, and then you can revisit your memory dump. You can go back and look at those notes at any time during the test, and you've got the information at your fingertips. Finally, I want to talk about increasing our distress tolerance. Worry, anxiety, and frustration all decrease test performance. So I want to focus on ways to process your worry and distress, both before and during a test, so you can enhance your recall of what you've learned. First thing I want to touch on is parasympathetic breathing, or square breathing. Now, this relies on activating your vagal nerve response, which is your vagal nerve has connections to your diaphragm, which is in the lower part of your stomach. So when you breathe in through your belly, you do that deep belly breathing, it actually activates this response. And when you have the vagal nerve response, your sympathetic nervous system is shut down. Now, your sympathetic nervous system is the one that's responsible for the fight, flight, and panic responses in your body. So when you shut that down and the parasympathetic nervous system is activated, your body calms down, your racing thoughts slow, and it's easier to remember what you've studied and learned in class. The easiest way to have this response in a quick and effective fashion is through square breathing, a technique that was developed to activate the vagal nerve response and your parasympathetic nervous system. So I'm just going to walk you through it real quick. You can also Google GIFs of square breathing, and they'll actually give you a little image to follow along. So what you're going to want to do is sit comfortably in a position with your spine straight, and then imagine a square with a little ball on the side of it. Now, as you inhale, and count up to 4 as you inhale, imagine that that little ball is sliding up the side of the square. Then hold your breath for 4 counts as you imagine the little ball rolling across the top of the square. Exhale your breath for 4 counts as you picture the little ball rolling down the side of the square. And then hold your out breath for another 4 counts as you imagine the ball rolling back to its original spot at the base of the square. You can repeat this for a couple of minutes or just 2 or 3 times until you feel calm, essentially. You'll know when it's worked. If you're not comfortable or able to hold your in-breath or your out-breath for 4 counts, feel free to change it down to 3 or to just skip the holds and just focus on very deep inhales, very deep exhales. The long inhale and exhale is what engages your diaphragm and that vagal nerve response, so that's what needs to happen to make it work. This can literally be as simple as closing your eyes and taking a few deep breaths until you feel your heart rate slow down, and then continuing with your test. Taking a break can also be very beneficial, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed. Just pausing in the test and giving yourself a moment to just breathe, or to think about something else, or to doodle can be very helpful. In the same vein, having self-compassion for your emotions is critical to taking tests and many different parts of life. It's okay to feel worried, stressed, or frustrated in a test. Tests in college especially, they're not meant to be easy. And by acknowledging your feelings and regarding them with kindness, you can actually process them more effectively and move through them to get to the point where you can go back to focusing on your test rather than being worried about how you're feeling. It's essentially the difference between getting caught up in your worry or getting angry at yourself for being worried, and instead saying something to the effect of, "Hey, I'm feeling worried right now because this is an important test, and that's okay. That shows that I value my education and I want to do well in this class. It's okay to feel worried, and it's hard and scary to feel worried. And I know I'm capable of this. I have studied for this, I have gone through the class, I can do this, and it's okay to feel worried as I'm doing this." So that self-compassion does take some practice to really get to the point where you believe it, because you gotta believe it. But I strongly encourage you to give that a try, both in test taking and in the rest of your life. Validate your emotions and know that they're okay. Now this might seem a little contradictory, but the next thing I want to talk about is emotional delay. Sometimes you can't deal with your emotions in the exact moment you're in. For example, if you were in that math test and you start to feel anxious and worried about your social studies test tomorrow, that's not going to do you very much good. That emotion of worry isn't going to be beneficial in that moment. So it's okay to kind of push that problem from your mind temporarily. It can be helpful to schedule a time later that day to address the emotion, issue, or concern that is persisting while you're trying to take the test. Simple as saying, "I can't think about that now. I have to focus on this test. I will think about that at 3 p.m. today." And then you actually have to address that emotion and address that anxiety or concern that you're feeling when you get to that time, because otherwise it'll just creep back in at another inconvenient time. Next, I teased these a little earlier. Grounding exercises are wonderful for helping you kind of get into your body and release tension. And what I mean by that is a lot of times our worry can take us away from the present moment or take us out of our bodies. If you've ever experienced, having that worry and not being able to stop thinking about what's going to go wrong if you don't do well on a test or an assignment, that's an instance where a grounding exercise that brings you back into your body would be very helpful. Now, one of the easiest grounding exercises I know is to engage your 5 senses and name 1 to 3 things that interacts with each of those senses in your current environment. So you're going to want to list things you can see, smell, hear, touch, and taste in the present moment, and really be aware of those and really be present with what they are. And that will help bring you back into your current moment and probably activate a couple of deep breaths, especially as you're trying to see what you can smell, and help you calm down if you're feeling anxious. Finally, positive self-talk is important, just as important as self-compassion. Encouraging yourself can do wonders, but it does have to be something that you can tell yourself with conviction. So mentally shouting, "I'm a mathematician," isn't suddenly going to make you Einstein, but reminding yourself that you've studied, that you've put in the effort, and that you're smart enough to be here, which is proven by the fact that you made it through class and you are here, you're ready to take this test, and you can do it. You've studied, you've put in the effort, you are capable. And that self-encouraging talk can really boost your confidence and help calm you down. So thank you all so much for tuning in today. If you have any follow-up questions or would like to schedule an appointment at the Counseling Center, please feel free to send us an email at counseling@clackamas.edu. Thank you, and good luck on finals.